lot of reports since as early as 2010 talking about sweatshops in Leicester, but that is literally surface level. There are factories across the UK that we haven't even tracked down yet that are very underground through subcontracting. This is where a lot of the exploitation takes place.
I'm Sophie Benson. I'm a freelance journalist and I write about sustainable fashion, workers' rights and consumerism. The dawn of fast fashion really happened on the high street. A CEO of a major brand that lots of you will have heard of saw that customers were coming into store, having a think about things, and then maybe coming back a month later because they thought, oh, well, it'll still be in. They thought, well, I want customers to buy something right now because they don't know whether it's going to be in the next week or not. And so it changed our shopping habits from maybe popping into a shop once a month to going in every week or going in every few days to see what was new. I think the supply chain probably sounds a little bit complicated, but all it is really is how our clothes come to be. It will start with the making of the fibre, so often that will either be cotton or polyester. If it's cotton, it's very likely farmed in China or India. In order to keep up with the pace of fast fashion, farmers were kind of approached by a big seed producer of genetically modified seeds in order to kind of keep up production. The seeds were so expensive and the pesticides to treat them were so expensive that farmers were getting into huge amounts of debt to be able to buy them and then to be able to kind of produce the cotton. They're tied to these GM seed producers. So that's just to kind of keep up with how much cotton the fashion industry needs. And then of course alongside that, cotton actually takes a lot of water and it's often now grown in really kind of arid, desert type, really dry areas, which means it needs a lot of irrigation. It's not being naturally irrigated through rainwater, for example. So that is using up freshwater sources, which are becoming more and more precious, and we're facing water shortages as we go into the next few years. And then at the same time, you have the use of pesticides. They're incredibly dangerous, and farmers are often not equipped with the right protective gear, and it will be coming into contact with their skin. They might be breathing it in, it might be going in their eyes, and it can cause cancer, it can cause skin issues, it can cause respiratory issues, it can cause reproductive issues. And also, it can be harmful to the environment as well, in that it kind of seeps into the groundwater and can contaminate other crops.
Hi, my name is Maisha. I'm a campaigner at No Sweat, and I've been campaigning on exploitation by global brands since 2013, which was the year of the collapse of the Rana Plaza building. My family are from Bangladesh originally, so I think that's why it was really shocking to see. I remember just during the day feeling really just horrified. I was talking about in class, I came home and there was a picture of a woman and a man in the rubble holding each other, and I think for me that picture kind of just switched in my head, like, this is wrong and we need to do something. The people who are making our fast fashion are typically people of colour based in the global south. This stems largely from colonialism and the fact that corporations in the West needed to make profit from the global south. As a result, we have factory hubs all over Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Myanmar, Ethiopia. We also have migrant workers in the UK and the US producing our clothes in factory hubs that are growing increasingly more and more, and they are predominantly migrant workers. The day in the life of someone who works in a sweatshop typically consists of working all day, including overtime in a factory for long hours, limited breaks, sometimes forced not to have a break or intimidated when they do take breaks. Very monotonous, kind of sitting down doing the same thing over and over again. Often face abuse, and because the workforce are largely women, sexual abuse is quite rampant in factories, which is used as a tool to keep workers working non-stop, to keep workers supposedly submissive to the factory's demands, which in turn are the brand's demands. When we talk about the sort of environmental impact, we talk largely about how it impacts us. When we look at the immediate impact it has on workers and the people who are actually within that vicinity, it's really dire. And we have a lot of these countries where climate change is impacting them the most, particularly Bangladesh, for example. There's flooding every year, and these are the people who are being impacted the most, the people working in these factories, in these countries. So union busting is prevalent across the garment industry. Whichever country you go to, you find that unions and workers attempting to unionize face threats, abuse, violence, and a lot of sort of collusion between factory owners and sort of thugs and goons who come and threaten the workers. When you look at UK factories, it's very hidden what's happening, and I think that's largely because of the threat that workers face. In an article in The Independent, there was anonymous workers and auditors speaking about the risks they face, speaking out, including risks to their lives, and generally trying to remain as anonymous as possible because there's no sort of protection there for workers, and the investment by the government into health and safety in factories completely declined, which makes it very hard for inspections to take place and for any sort of accountability.
Hi, I'm Asha Menon, and I'm Strategic Advisor for Freedom Row. Freedom Row is a tech startup that aims to help businesses with their supply chains, monitoring them from modern slavery. Growing up in Malaysia, I had first-hand experience to modern slavery. Malaysia has a huge amount of migrant labor, working on construction sites, nail bars to domestic help. Many of these workers are undocumented, meaning they're exposed to very little human rights backup for them and experience lots of different types of exploitation, from withheld salaries to passports being confiscated. It's hugely important to encourage brands to think about supply chains and modern slavery. First of all, we're moving towards a society that's a lot more conscious about what they're buying and doing. We see this, for example, in the meat industry, where it's become very much on trend to start buying plant-based food. Once upon a time, buying a Beyond Meat patty or Impossible Burger patty was expensive. That's because it was a niche product and there were limited economies of scale. But as more people bought into the vision and started buying these things, these companies then got to expand and offer things at a much more affordable rate. So people like you and me can now go into a shop and buy that, and it's comparable to buying meat products. Similar to that, now we're looking at a fashion industry, for example, that as more people buy into the vision of, hey, the clothes that I buy should not have involved the suffering of anyone else. As more people buy into that vision and we support ethical brands, we are going to get to the point where buying an ethically made t-shirt or handbag or pair of shoes is going to be the norm, and we can all afford it because we all should have the right to walk into a store and pick up an item of clothing that did not involve suffering.
Within the supply chain, there's a lot of shipping involved. So when you're making a single garment, it might be shipped to multiple countries before it's even gone into the shop or gone to the warehouse to be sold on site. So you might have a fibre that's grown in India, and then it might be shipped to China to be made into a fabric. It might be dyed in another country. It might then go to Bangladesh to be sewn together. The buttons or the zips might come from another country. It could be sent then to France to be shot, and then back to England or the US to a warehouse or to a shop. And so you're getting all these kind of air miles or shipping miles depending on how it's being sent between these countries. And so clothes have a huge footprint just during the manufacturing process. And that's having a huge impact on the environment. I think we're all kind of becoming aware of our own footprint in terms of, you might Google it when you're going to get on a flight and see what the carbon footprint of that is. And an item of clothing has the same footprint, but it's kind of magnified by 10, 20, 50 times because it's travelling all over the world in the process.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm a PhD student at the University of Liverpool, and I research the impact of brand in customer-facing employees and how not only it affects the employees at work, but also outside work. And I'm obviously researching fast fashion. And I'm also co-founder of Liverpool Fashion Summit, which is a platform led by students to promote conversations about circular economy, modern slavery, and sustainability. I started working in retail many years ago, I started as a visual merchandiser in Spain, and then when I moved to UK, I started working here, but in store. I've worked so many long hours. It's true, everything they tell you about retail. Work is extreme, and it just didn't felt right. But when I was part of the industry, I didn't feel attracted to it. Clothes were not clothes anymore. It was just stuff. After some time, I just burnt out. It really impacted my life outside work. I was always tired, and I even fell asleep, like standing on the street.
Since the rise of e-com, we've seen fast fashion kind of speed up even more. So it's now kind of ultra fast fashion. And you'll see if you revisit a website, a few days in a row, you could see hundreds or even thousands of pieces of clothing. We all have so many clothes now, and we all keep buying so many more new clothes that we end up feeling a bit overwhelmed. Our wardrobes are bursting at the seams, and so we feel like we need to purge and make more space. And what that often means is that we're just throwing things directly in the bin. Obviously, some of us, there might be people out there who are really diligent about it, but the fact is that in the UK, over £140 million worth of clothing is thrown into landfill every single year.
It's really important to count with the voice of the next generation, not only because they are part of the solution, but also because the decisions we make now are going to impact their life, their future, not ours. We're here for a shorter period of time, and if our consumption behaviors now are impacting their future, obviously they have to be part of the conversation. All this youth movement has shown that they are interested in having voice, in making the solution part of their lives and giving some advice from their own perspective.
So fast fashion is like basically when products are like sold and disposed of like really quickly, and they just like go into landfill.
It's like where you buy something and then say if it's like you don't really like it anymore, it's got something wrong with it, you just throw it in the bin and then it goes in like piles in like on the earth. Well, I think it's definitely bad because you just throw it in the bin and it adds to all the rubbish that's in the atmosphere. And also, lots of people who make the clothes, they get paid very little, and some of them are actually children.
If more people buy clothes, but they just get rid of them really quickly, it means there's more landfill, and it means some habitats might be destroyed or just generally polluted.
It's putting microplastics in the water, and it's hurting sea life like turtles or dolphins, and it's just polluting the water as well.
So now the sky is like not really polluted, but in the future it will be like polluted more, and like it affects poorer countries because they don't really have any like help for them. So
well, it makes me feel quite sad to think of all the people that were making those clothes and then it's just gone to waste. But it also makes me feel quite angry because I don't understand why the people who buy the clothes, they just wear it once and then they just throw it in the bin. And I don't understand what goes through their minds at that time.
It makes me feel like quite worried because like in the future it feels like there's going to be a lot more pollution.
What happens if we keep buying lots and lots of clothes?
It's going to affect the environment because we're buying loads of things and we're going to end up having too much, and we're going to be throwing it away and putting pollution and plastic wastes in the air.
And also, if we buy like too much from the shops, and they're just gonna have to keep on buying more and get in the factories and like trade from other places, which gives pollution. It's gonna be like quite bad for the environment. If you have a top or something you don't really like, maybe tie-dye it or write on it or something like that. If you have something that's got a hole in, just mend it. And I think that's a way of saving the environment and reducing all the rubbish.
Just because you don't like it doesn't mean you should be throwing it away. You could, like, if it's too small, you could pass it on. If something's got a hole in and you're thinking about binning it, all you have to do is get a sewing machine and sew it back up and put your own little pattern in it to make it look nice.
When you are finished with your clothes, you could give it down to charities or like fix them if they're like you could sew them or like decorate them to make them what you like.
I would like to say to like really, really high brands that have gone very far. So sometimes what happens is when there's like they do seasonal clothing. Like in summer, you get summer dresses and swimsuits, but in winter that all changes. If you got like a jumper in winter that didn't sell, you could make it into something that could be Christmassy. That is usually just for like hanging out with your mates.
Use sustainable materials and try and make clothes and products better quality so they last longer and they don't end up in landfill.
The people that make them maybe give them some more money because they make all those clothes and it's a lot of effort and they don't get paid very much at all. So